Welcome again to the Lilyless podcast, where our goal is to be a handbook for the living. In episode 9, we catch up with our friend Eddie Pepitone. We touch on Eddie's background, experiences in pursuing a creative career within America's capitalist system, and the importance of personal legacy and preparing for the legal aspects of life. We also chat about writers that inspire us, the impact of Eastern philosophy, and even Eddie's health and fitness routine. As always, visit lilyless.com for more information on the podcast and platform. You can also contact us from the website if you have questions or ideas for people or topics you'd like to hear us see on the platform. Thanks for listening. Well, but so we can dive in. I would say for me, I always start kind of at the beginning, right? So I know we've talked a ton while you've been here about kind of Brooklyn and things like that,
Oh yeah.
but childhood, um, I don't want to dive into like what drove you to entertainment, but what was it like for you growing up? What were some of the impactful things that happened that kind of drove you to mentally how you are today?
Mm. Well, Italian Jewish heritage. My dad's Sicilian. Uh, Sherman, you hear my cat in the background? Sherman, I'm on a podcast. Um, so, my dad and mom, man, they drove me right into insanity with their insanity. And big Italian family. My mom was clinically what is called bipolar today. Back then, they called it manic depression.
Yep.
And so there was a lot of you know, like, especially once I was well, I think I guess throughout my life, but just attention and angst in the household that I absorbed, and I became what my shrink would call a people pleaser,
Yep.
which is I had to and which I think is kind of the basis to be a comedian. Like I would kind of suss out what needed to be done so someone wouldn't get murdered here, mainly me. Um, and so I became very adept at gauging a room,
Yeah.
and seeing what the temperature of the room was and what I needed to do. And I always wanted to make my dad laugh and make my mom happier. Mixed in with that was great anxiety and fear from my dad, who was Sicilian and very big operatically, like with his anger. And my mom was it was a cauldron of like frustration. Dad, very big, operatic, kind of scary. My mom, I wanted her to be more like, and this is a basis for becoming a performer. I think I wanted my mom to be more present with me because she was so, she would get super depressed. And so I became a very kind of needy person like that. Like, give me your attention. And I think just became a performer because of wanting attention. And it was just a natural thing for me,
That was
I'm laughing because I that I was a performer in New York. I dropped out of college my last year. I couldn't. I was such like, I don't know. I say emotional, but I couldn't concentrate on calculus or abstract things, and I just wanted to express myself, and I started studying acting and comedy. I always wanted to be a comedian, seeing comedians, That's kind of like the foundation for it.
Yeah. So was there between the family stuff and then, you mentioned sort of wanting to get into acting and all that.
Mm.
Were there people outside the house that had impacts on you with regard to how you saw yourself or how you could move forward?
Uh, I guess that would be like, for me, like through uh, TV. Well, my dad, for all the shit I give my dad and kind of lay blame on him, he had a very good sense of humor. And we would watch TV together and laugh. Jackie Gleason, The Honeymooners, The Odd Couple with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman.
Yeah.
I got into other stuff myself, like just, Don Rickles, Buddy Hackett, if you remember Buddy
Yeah. Yeah.
Hackett. I love comedians.
Yeah.
Um, and one of my big challenges I would do was I would really get my father laughing, and sometimes I made iced tea come through his nose. He always drank iced tea,
Yeah.
and if I could get iced tea to come through his nose, that was sort of like an applause break. Oh, and then so I would say the outside influences were television,
Yeah.
and believe it or not, Hollywood, which now I hate Hollywood. And and then I'm trying to think like teachers, a couple of teachers
Yeah.
I had, that one guy, and this is funny, organic chemistry teacher. Just he was one of my first teachers who like actually could teach. Like he had a really great way to like engage us in learning. And that opened me up,
Yeah.
My friends when I was growing up, and again, this came from wanting to be liked so desperately. I became a natural comedian around that,
Yeah.
just kind of, I did this without thinking, entertaining. Um, it kind of, I just developed this ability from a very young age to entertain, to uh, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that, but I would make up stuff, and now I do it for a living.
Yeah. And
And
you and I have
and
talked
it's,
about the stuff.
mhm,
So it's the
mhm.
I don't yeah, I don't I'm not a good researcher, and you and I have had many conversations over the years, and but I'm not good at digging in. But I know that you've got tinnitus like I do. I have it in both ears, and it
Oh,
rings at different pitches in both ears. And as I get older, it
wow.
gets louder. And
I'm hearing it right now.
so yeah, so same here. And so I know you talked about sort of doing floor work and things like that. So what was that transition between you knew you wanted to do this thing, but then when you actually got to do it as a living, there was kind of a time period in there where that wasn't the case, right?
Well, I had to make money.
Yeah.
And the way I made money was just kind of real physical labor. And because again, with my dad and his brother, they were contractors. My dad was a teacher, history teacher, but that he really loved building stuff. And my uncle was like, my dad would call my uncle a magician
Yeah.
with a hammer, and like he was really a talented guy as far as building stuff. And so I did that kind of work in the summers. I never was really that into it. Oh my God. I'm just thinking of all the times I would be on the job sites high. I smoked a lot of
Oh yeah.
pot back then.
Yeah.
and I was useless, really. And then the other way I found to make money was waiting tables,
Yeah.
and that was physically exhausting, both mentally and physically. My feet would be killing me. I'd be doing 12-hour shifts, and one thing that was nice about waiting tables was I was around a lot of other performers and artists. This was in Manhattan,
Yeah.
you know, and I just met like a couple lifelong friends that I still talk to.
That's so the
You know,
impact part that I was asking about before. One of the things that's come up, my friends that I talk to that are making a living in creative spaces, what's
Mhm.
really funny is they talk quite a bit about the impacts of specific art forms or the things they had to work through to get to where I'm not going to say they made it, but they made it with regard to being able to live a life as an artist and support themselves.
Right.
Um,
Which is not easy, and
no, but
a
the
lot of
part that's
people can't
interesting
do
for
it.
me is I sort of almost have to pry out of them because I think it is such a um the reality of being an artist in America in a capitalist system is that you've got to almost give up everything else and completely throw yourself into it. And that was, for me, I think there was a short period in my life where I was willing to do that, but it was very short and I didn't keep up with it. And, I had other things.
Where you were willing to just do your own thing.
Yeah,
I
just not
mean, just
focus
do
on
your
anything
art.
external. Yeah. And what I ended up with is, never really having more than a year or two at a time where I would actually do that. And I know from all my friends who put in the work and done it, it's like friends of mine who are musicians, like I was on the road 250 days a year. And I was like, that's a hell of a thing. But what's interesting, what I was getting at is I hear these things, but when I say like, who are those people that had the impact, right? Um,
Mhm.
there has to be people, even if it's ex-girlfriends where things ended poorly, or people who just really impacted you during that time that said, maybe they said, I see something in you, or maybe they said, I don't see anything in you, and you should stop doing it. Maybe you need to focus on doing flooring full time, right? So is there a couple of those people that you ran into on your journey
Yeah,
that
I would say yes. Um, I'm thinking again of teachers, college professors
yeah,
who were inspired me. Uh, a historian who was a professor, and then an English lit. Like English literature, kind of was my entree into the arts. I think because I met like lifelong friends in my freshman year of college, and that was a real awakening for me as far as art and real art, because before then I was just kind of improvising my way through life,
yeah,
and I just was kind of a natural performer, comedian, or whatever. But then I got exposed to like real writers. Like my favorite writer for so long, and I still love him. I haven't read him in a while though. Again, is Henry Miller,
yep,
who's a guy from Brooklyn who became world renowned. He kind of became renowned for like typical American bullshit like sex,
yeah,
Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and they were banned because there was explicit sexual references. But he was an amazing artist and writer, and he came from Brooklyn, and he came from real hard. His dad was a tailor, and he came from like me in a way, like working class background. But so I would say college, between the people I met in these English literature classes, they were poets and they're still my friends. That was 45 years ago, and like we've been best friends for
yeah.
45 years.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. they two of them became teachers and did their poetry, but they really like have never stopped being artists, you
Yeah.
know. And so I think you meet people along the way who were like genuinely artistic, like you, and that becomes what Kurt Vonnegut said is the karass, your real family.
Yeah.
Are you a Vonnegut fan?
I was just I was waiting for you to get to the end of what you were saying, so I could say, yeah, Kurt Vonnegut is that's how I feel about the way you feel about Henry Miller is the way I feel about Kurt Vonnegut. So
He's right up there, man. And I realize that when I'm feeling down, he's a good person to read because he also, I think, like he affirms life, even though knowing it's a fucking shitstorm. You know, I mean, he came
the
through
beginning
World
and
War
end are
II.
terrible. The beginning and end are terrible. I watch at least 3 times a year. He did his presentation on the shape of stories. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, no, send me the link.
I'll send you the link. Yeah, it's the shape of story. It's one of the best presentations I've ever. I to this point,
What do you mean
5 decades
presentation?
plus in, it's he just talks about the shape of stories and the flow of stories.
Oh,
Right. Yeah,
where was he talking about this?
he's done it multiple times. Yeah, but I'll send you the one that I
Okay.
like. So yeah, you'll like it.
Okay. I'll watch it today probably
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as I'm sequestering from the heat.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he's great. He's got this beautiful light touch and you know, uh Miller kind of didn't. Henry Miller was kind of more of a, he would attack things. Um and I like that too, you know.
It's I mean I enjoy Rembrandt and Pollock, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so
Exactly. Um yeah, so and then I was thinking too, I really got into movies at college age, like just going to the art houses. Man, did I love going to all the little art house indie theaters in Manhattan, seeing foreign film, and these just different, like out of the Hollywood mainstream, and really digging them and feeling like I was very superior to other people who weren't seeing these foreign films. I still joke about it today. I said, "You people," like on stage, I'll say, "You people see all these big Hollywood movies, and the only films I see are things like a postman in Chile who has cancer, yet he delivers the mail." Yeah,
and he doesn't stop.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good pivot point though too. So you went through all of these
Mhm.
things. What age, or I shouldn't say what age. The age doesn't matter, but it was a
Mhm.
while. What was it like when you got to a point where you got paid to a point where you said, okay, now I can do this full time? Like not only
What
when
was
did
it
you get
like?
there, but then how did that feel when you were able to do that?
Wow, that was for me, it really didn't happen till later, you know?
Yeah.
Like I was waiting tables until I was 41, 2 or 3, and then I was done. And I haven't done it
Yeah.
since. And I haven't done a real job since a real job. That's a funny thing to say, but one, a job I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And it it happened incrementally. Like my first big break was on the Conan O'Brien show, where um, my friend Andy Blitz was writing on the show. He was one of Conan's writers when Conan was still in New York. And he wrote this thing specifically for me because I had been performing around New York doing the thing I would really do a lot. I still do it, of course, is this bombastic, like I
Yeah.
get up there and but I was really like that back then. And he wrote this thing about Life cereal. The kid, Mikey, give it a Mikey. He'll try it. I don't know if you remember that ad
I
campaign,
do.
but he wrote a thing for me where I was a kid who was up for the part of Mikey to be on the cereal box and in the commercials, but I was sick that week. And I just did this rant about how I got fucked by the Life cereal people on Conan. And it was just me. I was all of a sudden I was in Rockefeller Plaza, me and a camera. I had done a lot of stand up, but that felt so high pressure to me. And I came through, and that was difficult, man. I was so nervous, but I did it, and I started getting regular work on the Conan show, and then I would just get bits and pieces of work, and then I got a thing that took me to LA, which was because I was performing at the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York. And this guy named Scott Armstrong co-wrote a movie called Old School that eventually had Will Ferrell and
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn and Luke Wilson in. And he asked me, Scott came up to me and said, hey, you'd be perfect for one of the guys in the fraternity. And I went to LA and I was like, whoa, I like it out here, blah, blah, blah. And I got to work with these guys like Farrell. That was another level, you
Yeah.
know. I was like, holy shit.
Since then, had a quite successful career, or we may not call it successful compared to Prince or Michael Jackson, but the fact that you are,
Yeah.
living your life, doing
Mm-hmm.
doing what you want to do
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is a cool thing. But when we think about, so I
Yeah.
always talk about like legacy, and this may be,
Mm-hmm.
usually I get into this later, but hearing you talk about it, what you went through, how you came up, and then where you are now. I know, of
Mm-hmm.
course, personally, people like JT and Mishka, the impact that you've had on sort of people that are younger than you that are doing these things. And I know that there's thousands of people out there you've had that impact on. So from a
Yeah.
creative standpoint, we can directly draw a line from the work you've done and where you are. From a personal standpoint, though, when you think about legacy, because I always say it's not just financial, right? If we've got some money, we can leave money to whomever or whatever, right? Catholic Church, Cat Foundation, whatever we want. But the personal aspect of what you've learned, like you have six
Mm-hmm.
decades of learning and struggling and succeeding and failing and all of these things. And so, in that sense, I mean, there's a whole body of work out there that after you are gone is still going to be there. People can find it, watch it, laugh at it, critique it
Mm-hmm.
where they want. But what is it like for you with regard to personal life? Who are the people closest to you that you are impacting, want to impact? What is it that you're going to leave behind that isn't sort of public work?
No, I just try to, I think it sounds pretentious to say being an artist, but I think being an artist is also living your life artistically, which is just kind of a commitment to honesty and, uh, what's true to you. And, you know, for me, I've always been outspoken politically, and I speak out against, like speaking truth to power really is a
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
that needs to be done. And I I want that, I kind of make that clear, I think, to the people I know and just wanting to be someone too who comes from a place of uh, genuine warmth and you know uh, I mean, I have bad temper and I'm very irritable, but like then I laugh 2 seconds later at my insane. I'm always apologizing. I'll give you a for instance. I'm always apologizing to my veterinarians and his staff because they always say something like, "Oh, just come in at 9 o'clock, and we'll take blood from Charlotte." I love my dog so much, and then I come in, and they're like, "Okay, you could leave her with this," and I'm like, "You didn't say leave her." And I go off on them, and then later when I come back, I'll be like, "Hey, I'm sorry." When Charlotte's fine, and
Yeah.
because I can be, I don't know if that's like my dad's influence, but so like impulsively, uh, you know, pissed off, or
Yeah.
like my expectations are not met. And I feel like life is a constant struggle to kind of get your shit under control, so you're not a burden to other people, but you're of service, like instead of being a burden to others with your ego. You were talking about ego at the beginning, like instead of just being a slave to your egotistical demands, you're someone who, I mean, and that's the work, spiritually and mentally, is how do I stop being a big fucking baby and live a life where I am actually helping humanity. You know what I mean?
That's like I
That's
said,
the big thing.
well, so for me, that's why I said I don't see ego as negative. That ego exists within us all. It's the question of how do you, I'm not going to say shift. Ego has to be focused on ourselves to a certain amount, but how do you shift to where the ego is fed by also, to your point, being sort of a servant to other people as well, right? So how do you actually
Right.
find
I think
the
you have to be aware of
yeah,
you have to be aware of uh, your ego, and kind of monitor it when it's out of control, and it's, you know, because it's so easy to do that,
and you've met our
especially
dog.
for
Yeah,
artists.
you've met our
Hmm?
dogs and
Yeah.
my
They're sweet.
Serena and I have not traveled together unless we could take the dogs in years
There you go.
because I won't leave the dogs with just anyone.
Yes, me too. It's really kind of it. I don't want to say limits my life, but it determines how I live. Because I just take it so seriously. I mean, I never had kids, so that's my kids,
Yeah.
my pets. You know.
So how is it not to shift too abruptly, but that's the other thing that I keep asking people, and you may not
Hmm.
be surprised by the
Hmm.
outcome of what I've heard from people creatives that I talk with.
Hmm.
Is so when you think about the legal aspects of preparing for, when you're gone, I'm
Hmm.
taking a guess that maybe you've kind of got all that stuff in place at this point, but maybe that's a poor guess.
That's a poor guess.
Okay.
I'm starting to, though,
Okay.
which is interesting. Like, I recently talked to, for the first time in my life, a financial advisor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I, because I had never thought of, I mean, I'm always so in my head and in the moment, or, worrying about the moment, or that I haven't really thought about that. But I've started to, because, I'm 65. I've been, you know, going through a couple of health things. It doesn't seem like anything serious. But, I think it's just a natural progression. But I'm not one of these people who is like, oh, maybe it's because I never had kids,
Mhm.
but I never have really been a person who thinks about, okay, let me do this, this, and this, for when I'm not here. But like I said, I am starting to do that.
Yeah. It was funny. I was chatting with JT and asking him about it, and he said, I don't worry about it. I've got time." And I was like, "Well, you don't know if you have time. Stuff happens. You're driving
That's,
around everywhere. Things happen." And he said, "Well,
yeah.
if when I die, there won't be anything left, and nobody will worry about it." And I said, "But what if you don't die? What if you're just in a coma? What do you want?" And he was like, oh, well, people know I don't want to be alive and everything. So I said, well, we'll just use this recording as your documentation for that. And so
You mean pull the plug?
for me and
All
Serena,
right.
of course, we don't have kids either, but um, I maybe you remember, but the whole Terry Schiavo case back in the 90s, that was when it
Oh
first
yeah.
became clear to me where, her husband and parents were fighting over, do you keep her alive or not keep her alive? And I just started
Right.
thinking, I don't want to leave people that I care about with having to make these decisions and things. And that's where it came from for me. So,
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah. Ah, maybe. Yeah. Maybe I should. I wouldn't want to be kept alive as long as possible, even to the point of suspended animation. I'm kidding.
well, I always say people always say I want to live forever. And I'm like, I always say, thank God there's an end to this. So that's kind of,
Yeah, really. I know it is true that if we did live forever, then we wouldn't have a sense of the end. Like, you know, as my shrink says, death makes life meaningful.
yeah.
The paradox of that.
Yeah. That was a Alan Watts, same sort of thing. You die to understand what life is really about.
Yeah. And Eckhart Tolle, who's one of my go-tos, as I just am into the Buddhist Eastern stuff. It
Yeah.
seems to me they talk about the really important stuff, but he says you have to die to the past every second. Like you have to die to the past and to the future. Like you have to die to the, I think he says the past. This seems like a Steve Martin bit now.
Who's on first? But so, I don't know, what is it? 65. One of the things that amazed me the first time I met you, and
Mhm.
please don't take this offensively, I don't think you will, but I met you and,
Never
and you're
know.
built, you're built you and I are kind of built in similar ways, but you came in and the first thing you did with the dogs was jump down on the floor and start playing with the dogs. And I thought, this guy's going to need some help getting up. And then he was like, no, he's not. And then seeing you live and seeing the amount of energy, physical energy you
Yeah.
put into your show, um, you have some sort of genetic underpinnings that allow you to kind of keep going. I know you said you had some health things going on that hopefully aren't serious, but
No, they're
uh,
not bad. It's not like a prostate issue,
yeah,
that is being monitored. The things guys get. That's about. Oh, I have to watch blood sugar.
yeah,
You know, all that shit. All this stuff everybody's got to watch when they get older.
yeah. But that's so. What is at 65? What does
Mm.
the next
I've
couple
been hitting the
years?
gym with the trainer.
Yeah,
Which for me is great. Like I've been with this trainer on and off. I think for like 7 years, but then COVID hit
yeah,
and I stopped going to the gym, man. And it's hard to restart that.
yeah. Well, you can look at me and tell it's hard to restart that. So,
But I go twice a week to train with him, and it's just you know what? I don't lose a lot of weight doing it, but it helps my mental health an amazing amount,
yeah,
an amazing amount that I have moved around and done rowing and some lifting and resistance training and squats and na. And I just feel like, okay, I think it's a mental thing. Like, okay, I am not gonna let myself just go to waste,
yeah,
you know. And it's not easy because um it's for me especially, and I think for a lot of people, it's so easy to want to just be in comfort, and kind of be in the fetal position, especially if you've had an upbringing that had a lot of fear in it. You just kind of want to be in this womb-like state, you know,
Yeah.
and that has a lot to do with addiction too, you know.
I know it
Um,
will. There's days where it's just like I just want to sleep till 3 p.m.
yeah,
It's the
sometimes it's good to do that.
Well, for me, that's the dogs are they're so
Yes,
important because it's like,
absolutely,
well, they gotta go out, so I gotta get up and go do
absolutely.
that, and that's what gets my day going sometimes. So
You can't hang on to yourself. You don't have to try not to hang on to yourself. It can't be done. And that is salvation. The most important thing for anyone to realize is that you and every person you see will soon be dead.